Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm back to take a first look at this Week 11 NFL DFS slate on DraftKings. Before we get into it, if you could leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future content that I upload, that'd be greatly appreciated. And I have released multiple NFL packages over there on Patreon, and I have made some big upgrades I'm excited to talk about. I want to just go over this real quick before we start breaking down this week because got a lot of good stuff going on over there, and I definitely think that it's worth taking a look at. So right now I have my projections hub opened. I've done a complete revamp to all of my projections. First of all, we now have player names, team, position, week, opponent, salary, all hooked up to it. We have snap percentage, team snap, opponent snap, projected snap, DK points per snap, my projected DK points for each player. I'm going to give them a value rating so you can break down the top values based on salary and who's worth paying for. We have Vegas spreads added in so you can see how teams are aligning as far as spreads are concerned, over unders. This data is all going to import for you as it becomes available. Implied totals for each team, and then a big play rating, which is a calculation and a formula that I have created based upon yards given up per play for team and on average, how much they're going for the big play. So it's a quick little tool for you to see who's giving up those big plays. You can sort all this stuff and get access to the full sheet by becoming a patron of mine over on Patreon. But it doesn't stop there because we do have QB, running back, wide receiver, each position. I have narrowed it down to some important key stats to break it down to an even deeper level. We have true passer rating, accuracy rating, protection rate, pressured completion percentage, air yards per attempt, deep ball completion percentage, red zone attempts, red zone completion percentage for QBs, running backs. We have snap share, yards per carry, targets, juke rate, evaded tackles, yards created per game, yards created per carry, breakaway runs, breakaway run rate. All this good stuff. We get into wideouts. We have snap share, targets, average target distance, yards per target, yards per reception, air yards per game, air yards per reception, true catch rate, contested targets, contested catches, contested catch conversion rate, red zone targets, and end zone targets. And that's going to go for tight ends. That's going to go for everything. I'm going to give you these deep analytical stats. You can only see two guys on the screen, but of course, if you buy the package, you'll be able to see anyone and everyone on the slate. So I just want to go over that real quick because I'm really excited about the upgrades. I think it's going to provide you guys value, and I think it's a very reasonable price. So that's linked in the description. If interested, go ahead and get access to all my projections. And then don't forget, you'll still get all my matchup charts, my pace charts, all the stuff that I had included in the package before. So with that being said, enough of that promo stuff. I just want to let you know what's gone on over there, and let's go ahead and start breaking down this Week 11, figuring out some guys that we're going to want to target. And just, figuring out the guys we want to get in our lineup. So first, of course, I always like to kind of go game by game, looking at the Vegas lines and the Vegas line movements. Like I said, this is going to be included in the spreadsheets and all that stuff over there, but we're going to try to look at some change in the data and just figure out who we're interested in playing today. The big news is Drew Brees going down with the injury, of course. So Jameis Winston's going to become a viable target right away, jumping into the Saints offense as the starting QB. Drew Brees getting reports that he has multiple broken ribs and a collapsed lung, so pretty serious stuff there. So he will no longer be able to play, of course. So now we have to start looking at Jameis Winston, of course. And he comes in at a 5.9 salary on DraftKings this week, and he is very reasonably priced. And then when you look at the matchup, according to my QB matchup chart, the Falcons are the second best team to target in terms of DK points given up a game, giving up a lot through the air, a lot of touchdowns, and a lot of rushing yards as well to the QB position. So that's something that might be interesting with Jameis because we know that he can get out and use his legs a little bit, so the upside might be even more viable there. So he's the first guy that I have to mention. I definitely do think that I have interest in him. And then, of course, when we're looking to stack up this Saints team, I do think that we know where we're going. As far as their wide receiver core is concerned, Michael Thomas is the first guy that you want to be putting in your lineups. He's a target share beast. He's an established name in the NFL. I think if you've been playing fantasy football for a while, you know who Michael Thomas is because he's year in and year out one of the top producers. But He hasn't done anything big since he returned in Week 9, and I do think that this could be the week to jump on him because these Falcons provide a very good matchup. Not good at all against the wide receiver position. When looking at my wide receiver matchup chart, it's not like they're much better compared to how they fare against running backs. They're my fourth best team to target in terms of wide receivers. So I definitely like Michael Thomas, and I definitely like Jared Cook. Those are the two guys that I would definitely be starting my stacks with. They're the two guys that I think have the most upside. They're going to go down the field, get the ball. And, of course, the running back, Kamara, you can't forget about because Kamara is an absolute beast. Not only does he get it done on the ground, but he has an extreme target rate, and I don't think that's going to change with Jameis Winston taking over at the helm. If anything, it'll just probably go up. There might be more checkdowns for Jameis getting comfortable in this offense. And let's be honest, anyone that has Alvin Kamara in their backfield is going to get used to checking the ball down to him real quick because the yards that this guy can create is just tremendous. He can turn a play that looks like it can't get anywhere into something, and when looking at his production overall, you could see throughout the weeks, 8 targets, 6 targets, 13 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets. And then, of course, his attempts on the ground help him as well, so he's getting those up to 20-plus touches per game, one way or another, whether it's through the air, whether it's on the ground. Kamara, definitely the guy that you have to have interest in. And then as far as how the Falcons fare against running backs, we can see that they do actually have a pretty good run D. That's something they actually excel in. So the 24th best team to target in terms of my matchup chart for running back. So not the best matchup as far as running is concerned, but however, you see a lot of green over here on my sheet when we start moving from our eyes from left to right across the screen and in the middle, and that's because that's the receiving category in my matchup chart, and they have really struggled defending running backs out of the backfield, which that's an issue considering all the things we've gone over with Alvin Kamara and his ability to create and his ability to be involved in the pass game. Not an issue for our fantasy lineups. I definitely like Alvin Kamara this week. You're going to pay up for him at 9-2 on DraftKings, but I do think he's well worth it. And, these Saints are definitely a place that I'm looking to start with, of course, with the opened up value. So that's just a spot that I had to touch on right away because that's obviously the biggest news of the slate. Then we can start looking at, some individual games. This Eagles-Browns game, as far as guys we're looking to target in this one, when looking at my QB matchup chart and figuring out if the QBs in this game are going to be viable to stacking up. We can see that the Browns are the 9th best team to target in terms of playing QBs, and the Eagles are the 20th, so not quite as good of a matchup for Baker as it is for Carson. And I do think that the Eagles are a viable stack. Once again, this week, we had gone over last week. I just think that the target share on this offense is very condensed. If I'm playing Carson Wentz, I know where the ball is going. I know it's going to one of these receivers. Alshon Jeffrey did come back last week, but it's not like we saw anything change too much. Granted, he was kind of getting worked into the offense a little bit. But I think that Travis Fulgham's still going to be a guy that we're seeing targets for. I think that he's a guy that we can continue to target. He put up a dud last week, but as far as I'm concerned, that just helps us because his salary went down to 5.6 compared to a 6.4 price tag that we were paying for him last week. So I like him, of course, and then I do think that Jalen Reagor is here to stay. I don't think he's going anywhere, and he's only 4.3. He's a guy that was a value play last week, and I think he's going to continue to be a value play. He saw 7 targets from Carson Wentz last week. Only put up 8 DraftKings points, but that's actually not terrible at his price tag, and if he gets in the end zone, that's going to be a big performance for his price tag. And then, of course, Alshon Jeffrey, he's only 3.7. He's a guy that we didn't see really much from just because he's been hurt all year. He only had 1 target, but I'm really intrigued to see if we can grab him at a low price tag. And Coach Doug Peterson did say that his playing time is going to increase as the season continues. So they're going to be working him week by week. And it's just a matter of jumping on the bandwagon at the right time. Whether this week is that week or not, I'm not sure. I'll have to keep an eye on the news throughout the week. And as I'm making videos throughout the week and I'm starting to break down positional and stuff, we'll dive in deeper to this. I'm just taking a first look, of course, right now, but be interesting to see what he does. And then, of course, I might have exited out a little too quickly there. We want to have interest in Dallas Goedert because there's no Zach Ertz, so he's going to get the target share. He got a little banged up last week, so I think he might have limited his upside. He had to be removed from the game a little bit, but he had 7 DraftKings points, very solid for a 3.8 K price tag. I mean, last week he was 4.2. This week he's 3.8. His price went down. You got to like seeing that. And then when looking at my matchup chart, as far as how tight ends have fared against the Browns this year, we can see that they are the 11th best team to target in terms of tight end. Which brings me to the other side of the ball, where I do think that we could target tight ends for the Browns because the Eagles have been very, very bad against the tight end position this year. And the guy that I might have interest in playing this week, I'm guessing as I do more research throughout the week, I'll definitely have interest in is Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper is a guy that came back last week. He only had 10 targets, didn't really get involved in the offense too much. But if we look at his stats that he was putting up through week 6, he was getting a ton of targets. And then specifically week 4 through 5 and 6, where he really started to get settled in the offense. 7 targets, 10 targets, 6 targets, and double-digit DK points each game out. And I think at his 3.9 price tag this week, as I had mentioned, the matchup's very good with the Eagles, and I definitely have interest in him. So yeah, definitely interested in those guys. Moving along to the next game, we already went over the Falcons Saints. Bengals football team, not the highest total in the world. Opened at a 45.5 point line. It's live at 46.5. However, so we have seen that line climb up, which we always like to see when we're targeting these teams. And then when specifically looking at my QB matchup chart and who we're looking to target and which side of this game we're looking to target, we can see both of these teams aren't exactly the best targets, unfortunately. So I'm not really too excited about this matchup. We have the Bengals, who are the 15th best team to target in terms of QB, and then we have the football team, who is the 22nd best team to target in terms of QBs. And the football team actually just really stands out as a team you don't want to target in yards given up through the air. So not necessarily too interested in this one at first glance. The Pittsburgh Steelers come into this week with a 28.75 implied live total right now, a 10.5 point spread, and I definitely think that this is a team that we can target week in and week out. We have a condensed target share. I absolutely love how the volume in this offense has been concentrated. And when looking at their matchup against the Jags this week, the Jaguars are the 3rd best team to target in terms of QBs, giving up about 23.3 DK points a game. Giving up a lot through the air, and I definitely think I'm going to have interest in this Pittsburgh Steelers offense this week. It all starts with Big Ben, of course, at the helm of this offense. Last week we saw him put up a big number against Cincy. He had 32 DK points. He's the guy that I was interested in, and we have seen a price hike on him. Unfortunately, he goes up to 6.7 compared to 6.2 last week. However, like I said, I just love the fact that this offense is so predictable. We know where the ball is going, and then when looking at the wide receiver matchup chart and how these Jags fare against wideouts, you can see they're the 13th best team to target in terms of DK points given up a game to wide receivers. So I think it all kind of matches up here. And tight ends, the Jags are the 5th best team to target. So we can have interest in really a lot of this offense. It all starts with the wideouts, as far as I'm concerned, and these 3 guys have been putting up some serious numbers. Juju Smith-Schuster, the first guy, comes in at 6'4". He's going to be the most expensive. You look at his target share these last 4 weeks. He's got 14, 8, 7, 13 targets, 22, 21, 13, and 17.5 DK points. Of course, you want to have interest in him, but it's pretty consistent too. I mean, Claypool and Deontay Johnson, you do not want to forget about these guys. Chase Claypool, the last 4 weeks, 10, 13, 9, and 1 target. That's a little bit of an outlier against Tennessee, but the last 3 weeks, 14, 15, 21 DK points. And, of course, Deontay Johnson, another guy. I think that Deontay Johnson is consistently under-talked about. He's not talked about enough as far as his production in this offense and playing him on DraftKings. I think he's a guy that I have interest in week in and week out. And looking at his last 2 weeks, 11 targets, 10 targets. He had 14 points in week 9 against Dallas. He had 26.6 points against Cincinnati last week. 29 points in Week 7 against Tennessee. The guy's shown a lot of upside. And I just love how we can stack up this team. I love the way it's breaking down. And then I like Eric Ebron at 4K, a tight end that can get down the field, a guy that has upside. Looking at his target share, 6 targets, 5 targets, 8 targets, consistent targets throughout the board. He's a guy that I got interested in last week. He kind of let me down a little bit in the sense of only 5.8 DK points against that Cincinnati team in a good matchup, but great spot to bounce back this week. Definitely have interest in the Pittsburgh Steelers this week and that side of the ball. So don't forget about those guys. Moving further along, the New England Patriots and the Houston Texans. This comes in 25.25 implied total for the Pats, a 22.7 implied total for the Texans. When looking at my QB matchup chart, we can see that the Texans are the 8th best team to target in terms of QBs. So I definitely think that Cam Newton's going to be a viable option this week. As far as the Pats are concerned, they have been one of the harder targets, 29th best team to target for QB. So as far as Deshaun Watson's concerned, my appeal might be a little bit limited there. But specifically on the Pats side of the ball, taking on these Texans and looking at Cam Newton's upside, I do think that he's a viable option this week. Coming in at 6'2 on DraftKings, gets the matchup, and looking at his production, he hasn't really had a huge upside game his last 3 weeks, 16, 24, 19. And I'm looking for him to have that breakout game because we all know Cam Newton gets the job done on the ground. Unfortunately, this isn't one of the best rushing matchups as far as QB is concerned, given up this year, but they've given up the yardage to the air. And I do think that the Pats offense is a little predictable as to where the ball is going. It all starts with Myers at the top here, 4.9 on DraftKings, and I do think that Jacoby Myers is a viable option this week. 15 points last week, 31, 13, 10, but specifically when looking at his target share, he had 10, 14, 7 targets. Starting to see that increase at only 4.9K. I think he's a great option, considering that he's the number one option in this offense. It all goes to Harry and Bird after there. Looking at N'Keal Harry's involvement in the offense, he's been targeted pretty lightly the last 2 weeks, honestly. 6-4 and 12 targets the 3 weeks before, but the last 2 weeks we've seen his target share go down, but he is only 3.6, so maybe that'll help our case as far as his affordability. But Bird at 3.5, Damiere Bird comes in with heavier target share last week, 9 targets. I think his involvement in the offense is starting to increase. He had 10, 4, 2, 4, 9 targets. So, I mean, those are the guys that you're looking to pair up with Cam. I think we know where the ball is going there. And then moving further along to these later games, this Tennessee-Baltimore game, I really don't know what I'm interested in right now. Open at a 49 live total. When looking at my QB matchup chart as far as how the Titans and the Ravens have been against QBs this year, the Titans are the 11th best team to target. So the Ravens have fared really good against the QB position, though, so I'm not really sure that I'm trying to target them. 23rd best team to target in terms of QB. So I really just have interest in the Ravens side of the ball in this game as far as the passing attack. And, of course, it all starts with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, arguably the best fantasy QB in the game. This year, he's been a little underwhelming compared to last year. We haven't quite seen those video game numbers. 22 fantasy points, 18, 18, 31. Hasn't really had a big blow-up game since Week 6 against Philly. But I do think that this is a spot that he could get back on track because, when looking at the matchup, the Titans are a pretty decent target. Unfortunately, they haven't been getting up a lot of run or a lot of stats on the ground to QBs. And then when looking at my wide receiver matchup chart, as far as the Titans against wide receivers, we can see that they actually are the second best target and giving up 47 DK points a game. So I definitely have interest in these Baltimore wideouts this week. It all starts with Hollywood Brown, of course. He comes in at 5.8 this week on DraftKings, Marquise Brown. And when looking at his target share, he's really been underwhelming. But I tend to like that just from the standpoint of ownership. People might not be as high on him. People love to log into the DraftKings lobby, go to the game log, see how many fantasy points someone's been scoring and then play them based on that. So no one's going to want to play a guy that has scored 3, 6, 7, and 9 DraftKings points. So I do definitely think that he's a viable option. He's got the matchup this week. Willie Snead's the best guy. The next guy. Willie Snead, 7 targets last week. He got in the end zone twice. 4 targets the week before, 7 targets the week before. He has been getting increased involvement in this offense. I definitely have interest in stacking him up with Lamar. And then if you want to get sneaky, you could throw in a Boykin or a Duvernay, but that's probably where I kind of drop off a little bit. Not quite as interested in these guys, but of course, do not forget about the tight end and Andrews, absolute elite tight end. And when looking at my tight end matchup chart and seeing how these Titans have fared against the tight end position, we can see that they are the 12th best team to target. So the Titans are just pretty good to target as far as a pass attack standpoint. I definitely have interest in this Ravens pass attack, and of course I have interest in Andrews, one of the best tight ends in the game. Don't forget about him in your stacks in Baltimore. I don't think he will, but Mark Andrews, 13, 5, 6, 4 DK points has been a little underwhelming after putting up the 20 and 17 spot in week 4 and 5, but I do think this is a spot that he can get back on track. The whole Baltimore Ravens offense has been a little underwhelming, and I think this is a great spot to jump on the bandwagon, and we can see some good stuff from them this week. Moving further along, we do have to get into the afternoon games, of course. Covered most of the slate so far, but I just want to talk about these 4 o'clock games real quick. We got Miami, Denver, the Jets, Chargers, Green Bay, Indianapolis, and Dallas, Minnesota. When looking at the Vegas dashboard, as far as implied totals, of course, we're going to have interest in really, we got to kind of get through this, but this Green Bay, Indianapolis Colts game's looking pretty high, and then of course don't forget about the Chargers against the Jets because the Jets are not good. The Chargers come in with a 27.75 implied live total, 9.5 point spread, and we know who we're looking to for the Chargers. But when looking at my matchup charts and just figuring out how their matchup is against the Jets, we can see that the Jets are the 8th best team to target in terms of wide receiver, so that's immediately going to make me have interest in Keenan Allen, of course. I do think that he's a viable play this week. Comes in at 7-4 on DraftKings. Last week putting up a dud after being pretty consistent in the 20s. The 3 weeks before, he had 25, 21, 28 DraftKings points. And then last week only putting up 12, so not quite as good, but I do have interest in Keenan Allen. And then don't forget about this Green Bay Indianapolis game. As I mentioned, the total is climbing in this one. Pretty consistent. By consistent, I mean high totals on both sides of the ball. So you can stack this game up and feel good about picking one end of the ball and then running it back with the other. When looking at my QB matchup chart, we can see that both of these teams, I should mention, are really good against the QB. So 31st best team to target for the Colts. The Colts are the 31st best team, and the Packers are the 27th. When we move over to the running back position and see how they fare against the running backs, that's when things change because the Packers have been very, very bad against the running back position. The second best team to target in terms of running backs this year. So that's going to immediately make me have interest in some of these Indianapolis running backs. The only thing that sucks about the Indianapolis running backs is it's a shared backfield and it's a little bit unpredictable as to the volume these guys are getting. We've seen Jonathan Taylor take over, but last 2 weeks he had 7 and 6 attempts, and it's been Hines a lot out of the backfield with these catches the last couple of weeks. So keep an eye on that because he's been getting a lot more involved in the offense. He had 12 attempts last week, and then of course 6 targets. He always gets involved in that run game, especially if they get behind in this one. You got to have interest in him. And then when looking at the receiving yards and the receiving stats that this Packers team has given up, it's been less than impressive. So they're a team that we just want to target running backs with. And I do think the Hines could be a sneaky tournament play this week. As far as the Colts side of the ball, they are the 31st best team to target in terms of running backs. The Colts have just been a really solid team defensively overall. So I don't really have any interest in targeting the other side of the ball and the Packers outside of game stacks. But of course, you can game stack it. And then don't forget about this Minnesota Vikings team in this last game, 27.5 implied live total. Got to like them taking on the Dallas Cowboys. If you don't know by now, the Dallas Cowboys have been very, very bad as far as their secondary is concerned. When looking at my matchup chart, they are the 17th best team for QBs to target, but against wide receivers, they are the 6th best team to target. So we definitely have interest in targeting some of these wideouts for the Minnesota Vikings. It all starts with Adam Thielen, of course. And he's 6'3" this week on DraftKings, so you got to like him. And then, of course, Jefferson on the other side of the ball. That's why I like this stack so much. 7-5, 4-5 targets for Thielen. We haven't seen him have a big game, but he could definitely explode in this one. And then Jefferson on the other side of the ball. He comes in at 6K this week. 24.5 DraftKings points last week, but the target share has been consistent. 11, 4, 4, 10. Like to see that. And then when looking at my matchup chart for running backs, let's not forget that the Vikings have a guy named Dalvin Cook. And he's the guy that we always want to have interest in every single week. However, when looking at the matchup chart for running backs, the Cowboys are the 20th best team, and they haven't been giving up a lot in the receiving category. Rushing, they've been pretty bad overall, but the receiving category, they've been very good. And DK points per game, they're only giving out 22.7 DK points per game. So not the best matchup for Dalvin Cook. However, I think that with his total and with his involvement in the offense, of course, you have to have interest in him. At a 9K price tag, definitely got to have interest in Cook just with his involvement. We've seen the upside. He has 51, 42 DK points in week 8 and week 9. You got to like that. And on the other side of the ball, as far as how the Vikings are against the run, because Ezekiel Elliott's a guy that we always have to debate on whether we're looking to target. They are the 12th best team to target in terms of running backs, so you like to see that. The only thing is with the Vegas total and the way this game stands, the Cowboys are expected to be playing from behind, which might lead to more of a pass-heavy game plan. So, but yeah, that is my first look at this Week 11 NFL DFS slate on DraftKings. Just a quick little overview. We'll definitely get into some more specifics when I start breaking down my favorite plays position by position. So look for those videos to be released soon on the channel. I'm going to start breaking down QBs, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. We're going to look at top stacks later on in the week, and then I'll give you my final outlook of the week. And more content to come, guys. So if you enjoyed the content, please leave a like on this video, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified of any future videos. Don't forget to check out that Patreon package linked below in the description. You get access to all the things you see behind me on the screen right now, my snap counts, all these projections, good stuff going on there. And then, of course, don't forget about the matchup charts and the analytical stats on these QBs and stuff that we had gone over, accuracy rating, pressure completion, protection rate, all this fun stuff, guys. Linked in the description. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you in the next video where we're going to start breaking down my top quarterback plays for this NFL DFS Week 11 slate.